So I'd like to call this meeting to order. We can start with roll call. Director Eto, if you'd start us, please.
Hiroshi Eto, Director, District 5.
Carol Gregory, Director, District 4.
Claire Wilson, excuse me, Director, District 2.
Jeffrey McAnally, Director, District 1.
Director Danny Peterson.
Tammy Campbell, Superintendent.
Now, if you all please rise for the presentation of the colors by Todd Beamer, JROTC.
Forward, right, 10 high. Forward. Colors. Forward. March. Hold on. Hold. Order. Colors. Left. Face. Carry. Colors. Please, colors. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in a pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Carry. Colors. Order. Colors. Right. Face. Order. Colors. Forward. March.
Please be seated. So our first item of business this evening is our approval of agenda. I would entertain a motion at this time.
I move that the Board of Education approve the meeting agenda of November 10th, 2015 as submitted.
A motion, do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is the approval of the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda of November 10th, 2015 as submitted.
Do I have a
I second that motion.
Motion and second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is an introduction of new administrative staff. Dr. Campbell?
At this time, there are no new administrators to introduce.
Great, thank you. All right, next we will move to good news announcements. So as you are recognized, we'll ask you to please come down and see Dr. Campbell and I and for recognition.
I have Kenny Tyson is here. If you would come up and join them in the front. And here's why they're clapping about Mr. Tyson. The Boys and Girls Club of Federal Way has selected the 2015 Youth of the Year. Club members who earn this title embody the values of leadership service, academic excellence, and healthy lifestyles. They exemplify the critical impact that the Boys and Girls Club have on the lives of young people. This year, Kenny Tyson of Federal Way High School is the X3 Ron Sandwich Teen Center's Youth of the Year. He will participate in state competition, and if selected as the State Youth of the Year, would receive a $5,000 scholarship and advance to regional competition. As a student scholar, Kenny's determination and grit has enabled him to achieve success and continue to pursue his aspirations for life beyond high school. Congratulations, Kenny. There's a rooting section that needs to come up and be in that photo.
Well, I have some good news to announce as well as Michaela Walker here tonight. Decatur High School's Michaela Walker, a 10th grader, competed at the FFA State Convention last spring, earning top honors in the talent competition. She advanced to the National FFA Convention in Louisville, Kentucky. Walker, a vocal performer, was in the top 3 finalists at the national competition. She sang The Climb to a sold-out audience who was named 2nd place in the country. Let's say bravo to Michaela tonight. I think I'm getting all these shots. I'm getting all these shots. Every time.
I'm gonna snap one on this one. 1, 2, 3. I'm gonna get one more. Okay. All right. 1, 2. Should we do this one too? Is it all ready to go? Is it all ready? All right.
I would like to introduce Julie Cabanas and ask her to come up, and 13 student leaders from Thomas Jefferson High School. Okay. Thomas Jefferson High School hosted La Chispa, a regional bilingual workshops for middle level students designed to teach leadership skills to Latino students. In this workshop, students build self-confidence, strengthen their cultural identity, and increase their academic success. Student success is largely dependent on 3 factors: positive adult role models, involvement in school and community service. La Chispa offers students advancement in all 3 areas. Tonight we are recognizing Julie Cabanas, Spanish teacher and Latin student union advisor, along with 13 student leaders who helped to organize and promote the event. Congratulations.
The proverbial shorter in front.
Is Dr. Anton Furman in the house? To join us, please. You know, in support of our students, there's several people that are involved: guidance counselors, deans, vice principals, principals, and of course there's also school psychologists. Dr. Anton Furman was awarded Washington State Association of School Psychologists Best Practices Award for Assessment at the state conference. This is the 7th year in a row a Federal Way Public Schools psychologist has won an award at this conference. Chris Willis, Director of Student Support Services, describes Anton as an invaluable asset to our district and the school psychology profession. Congratulations to Dr. Furman on this award, and many thanks for your commitment to student well-being.
All right, next will be our legislative report and WSSDA priorities, led by Vice President Wilson.
I'm going to let the great people in the house leave because I know there's homework and things to be done. So thank you really so much for coming, and please feel free if you need to leave, it's okay. Okay? So I just wanted to give a brief overview, and we're going to do something different. We have a PowerPoint, and hopefully it'll kind of help kind of move through and give people some pictures to go with the words. But in the past few months, we've been giving legislative reports, and that's kind of all those things that are happening at Olympia that deal with all things education. And most of us would think probably first and foremost about McCleary and fully funding education. Director McAnally and I are part of the Washington State School Directors Legislative Assembly, where we have conversations around the kind of standing issues and advocacy that needs to happen on behalf of all students in the state of Washington, that school board directors can be directly involved in influencing things that are happening at the state level. And so we came together and I shared probably a month or so ago the top 10 legislative priorities that the school board directors from across the state came together and created to start to kind of put together what our platform legislatively was going to be for the coming year. And so you'll see the top 10 there that range from things like simple majority for bonds in November elections, which would mean 50% plus one, as opposed to the current 60%, which is a very difficult thing to reach oftentimes, to things related to school construction and facilities. Again, you'll see fully funding of basic education, special education, specific needs and supports for students. So kind of the top 10 issues that bubbled up to the top. The next step that was happening was that we as a group from Federal Way got together, and that came from input from leadership, from the board, from staff, from things that were happening from our unions, and just the issues that come forward for Federal Way. And we came up with what we thought would be our top 10 priorities. And what you see there is that out of the 10, and I'll show you in the next slide, the WSSDA has bubbled down to kind of 3 big ideas. And so what this slide shows is out of what we consider in Federal Way our top 10 priorities, 6 of those things appear in what currently are the 6 WSSDA priorities. And 5 of those things that we believe were important in our top 10 are clearly important, but didn't necessarily rise to a statewide platform level. Does not mean that we as a school district can't continue to focus on that and think about how we can influence and inform and potentially change some things that might impact students in Federal Way. So what happened was that then the legislative representatives that represent the districts across the state came together, took the 10 top priorities that the full state school board directors came up with, and came up with what they are calling and what we call the 2016 legislative priorities short list. And the short list are the following things. The top priority is, again, for the campaign to allow a simple majority of voters to approve school construction bonds in November general elections. Again, the key is the simple majority. Second thing that we know, and I should say that the one big idea is learning space for every student, that we need to have facilities, we need to have space for students, and under that, the things that bubble up were the simple majority around construction bonds, as well as 2 other things that really impact learning spaces for students. And that is the class size reduction mandates. One is the state support for the actual costs of school construction, and changes to the Growth Management Act so districts can build schools outside of the urban growth areas. And I believe in Federal Way that hasn't necessarily been an issue that we've been involved with, but there are districts that are in our region as well as districts across the state where this is a huge issue for them, where they've purchased land and such, and they're no longer able to use that land for construction of schools. The second big idea is ample and dependable funding, and the ideas under that are the fact that students need stability to succeed academically. Full funding for basic ed must be dependable, uniform across the state, and adjusted for inflation to cover costs of all mandated programs and services such as special education. And if you go back at some point and look at our 10 priorities, special education was one of those, but bilingual education, our English language learners, they were other special populations that I could see potentially fitting under here, but not specifically called out by WSSDA. The second around ample and dependable funding is the issue around levy reform, which we talk a lot about in Federal Way because this is an issue that we are negatively impacted by. And that we've got to figure out a way to think about how we do levy reform, but when we do that, we have to include the what they could call long safe harbor periods, so that districts are not harmed financially during the shift away from local funding for basic education. So robust levy equalization is required to mitigate huge differences in local taxing capacity to ensure equity for our students wherever they live. And that last piece is a huge piece for us in Federal Way. And then the last big overarching or big idea is great teachers in every classroom. And we know we can do all kinds of things in the world, but nothing will replace quality instruction and quality teachers. So under that and within that is professional development as a critical component of basic education. We cannot expect our teachers to do what we ask them to do without having professional learning and professional development opportunities. So with that, 96 hours of training each year, which includes 16 hours of cultural competency and equity education. Teachers will continuously improve, sharpening their skills and learning new ways to help all students succeed. So that's one of them. Then the second is state bargained and state funded salaries, which recognize regional differences and the needs of hard to staff schools will enable all districts to attract and retain highly qualified staff. And I think the important piece is the regional differences and the idea that we understand that we need to attract and retain and sustain quality teaching. And we also need to recognize that with across the state, there are many differentiations by region that need to be taken into account. That is the priorities, and I'm going to pass it over to Director McAnally to see if he has anything that he would like to add, or Dr. Campbell, anything that you'd like to add.
So I'd actually have to open it to the board and ask any questions that you may have. Dr. Gregory?
In talking about school construction and the levy, are you viewing this as a short-term solution?
So they're just trying to figure out how we get to it, right? How are you going to fund buildings when we begin to look at the piece of how many classrooms? In Federal Way, we need 85 classrooms, I believe, roughly, for us to get to the K-3 class sizes that they're trying to reduce to.
But that isn't my question.
So
My question is, that's a mandate that it be state funded. So a construction levy should be short-term. I mean, we shouldn't be still having construction levy, should we?
Well, it depends on what the legislature does, right? There's
Well,
gotta be a
but
way to
it's a
fund it.
state mandate that it be state funded. So additions could be, but this is not considering the bulk of the cost of state school construction. Right?
If the legislature does something about it, but at this point,
No.
so the question really is within, what is the legislature going to do? So based on where we're at now.
No, that
if we
isn't
don't-
the question. The question is, what is the requirement of the state in school construction? And if the requirement of the state in school construction is as the Supreme Court has mandated, then we shouldn't need school construction levies.
Right.
Our dependency shouldn't be there. So I'm looking at this as a short term and maybe some local flexibility. And is that how WSSDA's, or did you get into that?
I think WSSDA's take on it at this point is it needs to be in the top 3 so the legislature does something about it and truly does fund it, because that's the concern. Is
Okay.
I don't believe that the school directors believe that funding is going to come from when they're still struggling to find the $5 billion just to fund basic education. So
Well, but
I get what you're saying, but that's part of why they're trying to push. One is to be able to get the bonds, the short-term bonds done, right, in the short term. And then also just the need, because the need is great statewide. And so, if the legislature moves, I think we're
Well,
great.
but I don't want the legislature to think that
They're
there's
off the hook.
off the hook because we're gonna worry about whether we have 60% or 50%, 51% in November. I mean, I think that's a minuscule issue compared to the second part, and that's what I just wanted to be sure of.
What you're describing too, when we've met at regional superintendent gatherings, is you find groups being pulled between the short-term solutions, not wanting to not say them, worried that that won't happen, while they know that their long-term interest in some ways could conflict with what they're asking for in the
Yeah.
short term. And I think that's your larger point.
Yeah.
But
So
I do see
if two
districts
is
doing
really
that.
the emphasis, then that makes sense. But one shouldn't get in the way.
I think the other thing that's happening, and I'm just going to put my early learning hat on here, is we continue to expand early learning, which is not funded through basic ed, and we don't have construction funds, and we're expecting to have pathways for young children to move into our K-12 systems, and so we're having facilities issues as well, because as we move to full-day programs or potential universal pre-K, we no longer can put children in double classrooms, which is what we used to do with our part-day kindergarten as well. And suddenly, part of our class size issue with full-day K was we needed twice as many rooms for students. And the same thing is going to continue, and that certainly isn't going to be impacted by school construction bonds. But it is something we have to continue to think about as we're creating pathways for students, is how are we also planning forward for those young people who are in our landscape prior to age 5, and how do we partner and make sure that we're not only looking at our K-3, because that will continue to be an issue as long as we're trying to be robust in our early learning programs.
I think, though, we also, as school directors, have a responsibility to look at 4 through 12. And right now, the state is mandated by initiative to deal with 4 through 12. We put that off. And I don't want to lose sight of that either, because as educators, we need to weigh into what's real and what's not real about the numbers that were set. And that's a long term, but I think that we've got to understand that this is really early learning to K to 12, and 1 through 3 is the beginning.
And I think the focus on getting the simple majority is, as we look at Highline, that struggled with 178 votes of not passing, and Representative Gregerson's really pushing this, and there's quite a bit of bipartisan support, is really to get it passed and do it in November, because that's where they're saying it'll cost the least, right, and have the least amount of impact, and just for the short term until the legislature comes forward. But my guess is it'll be after 2018 before we really look at construction, until we get McCleary funded correctly for just basic ed.
Well,
so
yeah,
it's
could be.
Yeah.
My comment is, when I first got the newsletter from WSSDA on their top 10 priorities, I was hoping that the numeric order wasn't really reflective of what was in their minds so important. So I'm glad to see that the leadership here at Federal Way Public Schools, came up with a different sorting, because clearly you got to have fair pay for the teachers, and you've got to have all those systems in place so that the students are supported, so that they're engaged in the classroom. Because if you have engaged students in front of good teachers, it's all going to take care of itself.
So just to make sure you know that those are not WSSDA's priorities, those were our top 10 priorities based on weighted votes by all districts. So we are WSSDA?
I understood.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, because, and again, when you talk about districts from the size of very, very teeny students, not small students, small districts from all students in one school to very large districts, it also changes those priorities greatly and what folks are able to leverage or not. So thanks, I just wanted to make sure.
And for Federal Way, it's so important that the allocation of funds from the state get reworked. And so that has to be a high priority. So to see that where, communities like Federal Way get their fair share of basic education funding is really important. So I'm really glad to see that the priorities were reshaped.
regionally.
Director Gregory?
Just one other question. When you put levy rollbacks on the Federal Way one, what were you suggesting?
So the way this works, and I can't remember, do you remember exactly what levy rollbacks were? I need to go back and look, because what happens is it's a list of, there were 85 of those, and those get prioritized, and so we picked out of the list that was there. And it truly is talking about how that levy, it's the levy equalization, I believe, and how they look at that and what the rollbacks look like. And so it's the balance. It really is
Okay, because
driving about getting rid of the funding
it's not an
formula.
assumption that by rolling back levies, we fund schools.
No,
Okay.
no, it isn't. You're exactly
Okay.
right. It is the
Okay.
ghost money going away that has a big
Okay.
impact. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I was gonna look at our notes, but I think that's exactly what was in our notes. I think that's what was in our notes. I was gonna look, but yeah.
So my big hope out of this is that we start to have conversation and dialogue. February 1st is the day we go on the Hill as school directors statewide and superintendents, all the organizations. But if we have a different message that we want to send from Federal Way, I think it's important between now and then as a board that we discuss those. And we take the WSSDA and WSSDA standards and go forward, but as we meet with legislators, say, here's the differences for Federal Way. And I just want to make sure that we keep that in the forefront. Along with the conference next week, this kind of gives you an idea of where things stand and just things to look at as we come back and discuss things as a board going forward.
I had just one other thing I wanted to say that, and you mentioned it, that next week we do have our state school directors conference in Bellevue, and there are many legislative sessions that will be happening, and just to highlight a couple that relate really specifically to the things we've just gotten done talking about. One on McCleary versus Washington, and so it's an update from the plaintiffs. One on education finance reform. Hot topic on simple majority on bonds in November might be a great one to go to. And then the next steps for compensation and levy reform. So really digging a little bit deeper into each of those related to the legislative priorities that have come out.
Perfect. Anything else? Thank you, Vice President Wilson. And our next item on the agenda is public comment. So there are blue sheets on the back table. If you have a desire to make a comment, that's what you fill out and bring forward. So our first comment this evening will come from Jennifer Cox.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Cox. Oh, do I go over there? Yeah. Good evening. I'm Jennifer Cox, and I'm here tonight with my friend, Mrs. Amy McGraw, and we're from the Sequoia Middle School PTSA. We've got some concerns, and I just wanted to first say that I am a huge believer in public education. I grew up with public education, and I believe in it strongly. However, I'm losing sleep, and I'm very concerned, and I never thought I would have this concern regarding the state of public education for my own children, but Sequoia is in crisis. And as a parent and part of the PTSA, I don't know that a lot of people are aware of this, but there was an influx of students in the fall enrollment period, and the school was basically ill-equipped and unprepared to handle that. So much so that for 7 weeks, the children went without permanent schedule. And in middle school, children are meant to get their schedule, get used to the idea of shifting around to different classes and things like that. 7 weeks this went on, where there were 75 children in an art class, shoulder to shoulder. Gym classes were, too many children. The point is, all of the children who came in the fall, ready to learn and eager to get started, were put off and put off and put off by assembly after assembly. And no structure, to the point where now that they finally got the ball rolling, there's a discipline issue. There are families that are considering leaving. There are families who have left, and there are children who don't feel safe in their learning environment. And you know as well as I do that if your children don't feel safe in the learning environment, they cannot learn. I'm upset to no end about that. I'm losing sleep. I don't know what to do about it, so I'm here to bring this to the board's attention. We're starting a campaign at the PTA level, talking about trying to enlist parents to come to school to be a presence, parents on patrol, just to get more grown-ups in the building so that, you know, the teachers don't have to be disciplinarians all day long, so that they can actually move forward and teach the children. I need your help and I need your support. And I don't know what else to do about it.
We'll take it under advisement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Next is Amy McGraw.
Good evening. I am a mother of a 6th grader at Sequoia Middle School who at the beginning of the year was very excited to go to middle school. After her first day, she said, "Mom, I love middle school. This is great. It's not scary. It's a lot of fun." So she was excited, and I've been also a long time supporter of public education. I believe in it. I had a mother who is a teacher, a sister who's a school board member. So this is not about cutting down public education and attacking teachers and staff. I have grown to love dearly and respect the teachers of Sequoia Middle School. I think they are some of the finest people I've known. How my experience started about 7 weeks ago, as the children were in the midst of the turmoil and the constant schedule changes, I noticed my excited about school daughter kept coming home and saying, "Well, Mom, we didn't get to do our lesson today. We have to wait till tomorrow because the kids were really bad." Or, "Mom, today it was terrible. Mr. Mack had to yell, and Miss Yamasaki had to come in and threaten that her boss will come around." And I started hearing these stories and then hearing stories about, "Oh, the boys at my table took my supplies." And so I finally said, "Okay, enough. I've got to get in there." So I went to talk to her science teacher and volunteered that I would come and spend time in the classroom just to help corral the kids, and he was totally grateful. So at about 7 weeks ago, I began to spend at least 2 to 3 days a week in the school, all day in the classrooms, sometimes in the office, sometimes in the library. And what I can tell you is that there is an alarming state of crisis at that school right now. If you were to spend any time, I guarantee you would come away with the same feeling, the same alarm, the same frustration, depression, anxiety that I and many of the families, parents, and virtually all of the teachers and staff are feeling at this point. The group of students went from about 520 to 640 with no additional resources. Unregistered students spent days in the common area just drawing because they couldn't get, I think it maybe was over a week. Based on my own observation and speaking with teachers and leaders at the school is completely overwhelmed, and there is no level of educating going on right now. It is mostly trying to keep the children calm and safe, which they're not even doing a good job. Just today, I witnessed a substitute coming into the office and saying, "I quit, I can't come back, I won't come back." A teacher was called effing B. You can imagine what that actually means in the middle of class. Last week, a fight broke out in the middle of a 7th grade class. 2 students going at it, another student breaking up the fight. And on that same day, I was taking another child who a rock had been thrown at him to the office while EMS was coming in to treat a child whose hand had been crushed in a fight. There are daily fights and in the common areas, in the classrooms. There's open defiance, there's bullying, lessons plans are delayed day after day. And this is not just stories. These are things I have seen personally every single day. We can't expect our wonderful teachers to have to teach in this atmosphere. So what I have done, and we wanted to let you know about, I know my time's about out, is Parents on Patrol. I have the flyers that we've created. This is just one of our, I thought, you know, I don't know what else I can do but to start to get the resources of parents. So I've been passing these out. We're gonna do a lot of work on getting the word out. We're gonna do a training. We're gonna get these parents in here. We just need more adults, period. And we do desperately need your support to investigate, to understand, and find out the root causes beyond you know, just the influx of students, but at what level do we need to start making change? So,
so can you, we are way beyond time.
yes,
so,
yes, yes,
okay.
thank you. We really appreciate your help and support in this matter.
taking
And I do have the
advisement.
flyers if you'd like to see them before
Perfect.
you go tonight.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Our next is Alton McDonald.
Good evening, Mr. President, board members, Dr. Campbell, Superintendent. For the record, my name is Alton McDonald. I'm the president of New Century Justice Network. I came before this body before to address you on several subject matters, and I will continue to be here until the problem in Fairway School District is fixed. And my conversation this evening with you is going to be about racism and discrimination in the school district. Dr. Campbell, we're happy to have you here, ma'am. However, as a black educator who have worked so hard for your accolades to be laid on you, I want to address so that you understand that there are issues in this school district. I deal with racism and discrimination. Black students are treated differently versus white students, and how black employees are treated differently versus white employees. There's no other way for me to fix it or to make it look pretty. I'll give it to you as it is. At the Decatur School, middle school I think it is, the police officer, there was an incident over there maybe around 4 or 5 years ago where a police officer slammed a black child up against the wall. Nothing was ever done about it. We have a teacher in your district who assaulted a black child, a young child, male child. That teacher got a pass. Nothing was done about it. The district was notified about it, and the district have a fiduciary responsibility to protect all child, as you rightly articulated, and also to send this information on to OSPI to investigate the teacher, whether or not her credentials should be sanctioned or taken away from her. Nothing happened to her. She continues to teach in the public school district in Fairway Way right now. Then we have another incident. And so we go from incident to incident how white teachers are doing things that are inappropriate to black students in your school here, in the school district, and nothing happens to them. Now you have the black employees who work here, and they are being mistreated and come under issues of discrimination, because sometimes it happens to be that we are in a position, and sometimes we are by ourselves. We have no support as it relates to our peers. Our peers are white, I'm black, so if something happened, they want to move Alton McDonald out of the way, then they gang up with me and I'm gone. So I just wanted to praise the district that this is a systemic problem. Institutionalized racism, which becomes a fabric of the America, and also now is here in Fairway Way and been here for some time. The past superintendent, Tom Murphy, he tried his best, I would say, to address those issues on his way out the door. But the things remain the same, even though it looks like it's changing. So I must ask this board, I came before you before in the past and will continue to come until this problem is addressed. It's a very serious problem. It's a cancerous problem that needs to be cut out. And so I hope that as you sit and listen to me, that you will think about what is it that you're going to do to address these issues of racism and discrimination here in the district. By having Dr. Campbell here, who's a black woman, a black educator, does not take away your problem. Your problem is still there, and she, in her capacity as superintendent, must address these issues. And she's going to need your support, board members, to seriously look at these issues. And when she brings the hammer down on those who violate the law and the rights of others who are black teachers, who are black students, and black employees in this district, that the school board need to do the right thing and support them in their endeavors. Cultural competency, we're talking about that, as was rightly said by the director, where we can understand each other's culture, how to interact and to respect each other. If we do that, then this district can be a better place, make the community a better place, and make America a more better country when we start respecting each other's and our different cultures. Thank you for listening, and I hope that you think about what I just stated to you, because I will be back.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
So next on our agenda is superintendent comments. Dr. Campbell?
Good evening, everyone. I am pretty excited after we've had our first 2 days of core planning team. This was the launch, really, of our strategic plan. The plan will shape the work that we're going to be doing in the district. I see our goals generating out of the strategic planning process. We had over 100 of our leaders, both internal and external leaders, in the room. It was pretty exciting, and I'm looking forward to the work that's to come. This is just early on in the process, but there will be more to come. I also would like to share that today I was at Todd Beamer, where they had their Veterans Assembly, and it was absolutely powerful to see those young people, as well as fellow veterans, including my husband there, celebrating their service on this very, very special day. It was just inspirational to see how well that particular day was outlined. So those are the big highlights for us. We'll be focusing in Federal Way over the next few months around the strategic planning process, because we know we can improve and get better. And I think there will be some exciting turn of events that come out of our strategic planning process. Thank you.
All right, school board comments. Director Peterson, would you like to start us this evening?
I'll keep mine short and sweet tonight. Just want to thank everybody for coming out tonight, and yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Vice President Wilson?
Okay, I'll take your time. I guess I'd like to share that the last week in October, I was able to attend the Policy Link Equity Summit through my work, but it totally relates to the whole conversation around equity and inclusion and how we're really meeting the needs of all. And the title was All in for Inclusion, Justice, and Prosperity, and this idea that we have to consider all sectors when we're thinking about equity, and specifically race equity, not just education, but jobs, transportation, and housing, and how all of those things have this intersection and need to be looked at as a whole. I also had the opportunity on the 31st to spend the evening in the rain with Dr. Campbell and a couple of hundred students at We Scare Hunger, and had a great opportunity to address the students that were there and thank them for their probably 4th year, I think, of collecting food for our community. Also, like many of you, were involved in student-led conferences that I hope people had an opportunity to attend, and also ask questions and find out a little bit more about how their kids are doing and how they can be supported academically. Had a chance to spend some time at the Pedro Noguera conference, and it was an event around, again, educational equity, and the exciting part to me was twofold. One is the youth voice and how important that is in this work, and then the second thing was the regional nature of the gathering, and the fact is that if we as individual school boards try to take something on, we really can't change that, because our families and our communities live in geographic areas, and we really need to look at things geographically. And so it was wonderful to have our partner districts in the same room talking about making change. And then Saturday I spent the day and had the fortune of being invited to the Somali Community Forum on Education, where the Somali Parent Education Board and One America teamed together to create a day-long event for Somali families in our region. And there were parent panels that talked about early learning. There was parent panels talking around K-12, parent panels talking around special education, college and career. But it was really a day of listening, and they had invited folks to really have an opportunity to hear not only what challenges exist, but also what solutions they're coming up with and how they're interested in being part of the change. And then I too had the opportunity this morning to be at Todd Beamer, and this was my third Veterans Day Assembly, and every one is a little different, and I think the different one this year and the one it's probably been the most touching was the personal stories that they included. So not only Dr. Campbell, but 3 other students also invited their uncles or grandfathers up and were able to tell the story of their service and to thank them. And the assemblies were just incredibly respectful, and the students were just amazing. And then I also will just say I look forward to our second educational equity convening that's happening the day after tomorrow, where for the second gathering we'll have about 250 educators and superintendents and board members and leaders across the region coming together to really, again, think deeply about the issue of educational equity and what it means in our policy and our practice.
Dr. Gregory?
Well, as you know, my attention's been rather divided in the last few months, and I'm happy to say that I will have a much greater focus on the school district and the school board, and look forward particularly to working on the school funding issues that I feel like through what's happened in the last few months, I have a much better understanding of what the issues are that we're facing, and so I'm going to be a little cautious at agreeing to anything that comes from any group until I see the fine print, because there's a lot of good talk about how we're going to solve the education funding problem, and some think it's very simple and some think it's very complex. But we have to look out for ourselves, and we're going to have to be really careful that we don't go along with the group, agree to whatever looks good, and forget to look at exactly how it affects us. That's happened to us once. We can't let that happen again. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Eto?
Well, I was glad to hear that the strategic planning sessions have been well attended. We still have sessions on Wednesday, the 2nd of December, Monday, the 8th of February, and Friday, the 29th of April. So hopefully the attendance levels will stay high. And if people want to drop in, I'm hoping it's kind of open for people to kind of hear what's been going on. I've got on schedule on the 25th of January next year that at Todd Beamer High School we're going to hold a outreach session with the community, so I'm looking forward to that, and hopefully we'll get that advertised out as well. I do intend to attend the Equity Conference in Renton on Thursday. Glad to hear that it's going to be like 250 people. It's good to hear. The Diversity Commission, which I'm a member of with the City of Federal Way, is working with Thomas Jefferson High School on Martin Luther King Day. So next week we're going to be meeting on that. So hopefully there's going to be opportunities between the city and the schools to work together on diversity and representation of diversity, so that the schools and the city council can work policy issues that affect our community. And then this Friday, or rather Saturday, I'll be going to the Motivate, Inspire, and Change session at Federal Way High School. So I'm looking forward to that. Thanks.
Thank you. So I did attend the 2 days of strategic planning with the core team as an observer, and I too have to reiterate what Dr. Campbell said. I'm very excited about the direction and what's coming together, and those leaders out of our internal and external communities coming together to determine what our next steps are and where our mission, vision, and values will be as we move forward. So I'm excited to see how that process happens. As Director Eto mentioned, there is actually going to be 5 different meetings, one within each district. The one at Todd and Beaver will be out of District 5, but each of us will have a meeting sometime in January or early February for all 5 districts to have kind of a community forum to come together and share ideas and with pieces about what has come out of that core team. And I would encourage you to please attend and be a part and make sure that your voice is heard, and that your alignment is the same, or anything that may be different, that we hear that from you, so we can clearly understand what it needs to be to create our pillars and our focus areas for going forward. I too attended the Equity Through Excellence with Dr. Nagaro. It was powerful, and it's nice to see as you share that we look geographically and how we worked collectively together to make change around those areas. The Mike Conference, this is the second year, right? Move, Inspire, and Change. It actually was born out of students and what they wanted to do to make sure they could explain to their parents their needs and how those needs were and how to help move forward into post-secondary, whatever that looked like, within the own languages of their home spoken languages. And it was pretty powerful last year, so I'm excited again. I will go this year to see that. I did attend Sacagawea, again, in my normal weekly visits to the schools within my district. And that's all I have to share at this point. So next, Dr. Campbell, if we'll move to the technology levy, excuse me.
Okay. I'm going to invite Sally McLean up to the podium to join me in this presentation. I want to tell you that Dr. Danny Pfeiffer really worked hard to create this content, and she's home ill today, so I'm sort of pinch hitting for her. So just bear with me as I try to catch up and do her well in this joint presentation. So as you mentioned, we will be sharing with you just some big ideas. As you know, the last work study, we went deeper into the focuses, the foci that we would be outlining as a result of our tech levy. But this particular levy will be focused on improving and enhancing our current technology, both in the classroom, student access, and how we're preparing our students. We've got 6 big goals to have accomplished at the end of this presentation: to provide recommendations for the replacement technology levy, to provide information regarding past and future financial impacts, to provide information on impact on current investments, to share themes and recommendations for upcoming levies, as we had focus groups where we listened to students and teachers and families in terms of their needs. We also want to share proposed language for the resolution, and we want to share with the board the superintendent's recommendations going forward. There are 5 big ideas that at the end of this levy that we are going to be holding ourselves accountable for, that we would say we had some deliverables. The first is that we're increasing student technology access. The second is teacher devices and professional development, that we not only hand out devices, but that we have a comprehensive professional development approach. One example of this is we roll out our ELA adoption. This coming summer, we're going to integrate technology in that, so the integration happens real time as we do adoptions. That will be something new that you'll start to see. English language arts. Infrastructure replacement, this is going to continue, although it's not going to be the focus that it was early on during our first cycle. We'll continue to enhance it and make sure that it can support the additions that we'll be adding. We will continue to expand our demonstration sites or academies, and specifically what this means, we're going to be looking at our K-8s, and we're going to be focusing on increasing access and knowledge to technology related to career pathways. So there will be some partnerships with CTE in addition to increasing devices and professional development. And lastly, we will be increasing and enhancing our classroom presentation stations across the district. In other words, what teachers use every day that allows technology to have a powerful impact on instruction in the classroom.
Good evening. Now you get to hear my voice for a couple of slides as we talk about some of the financial aspects of the current technology levy. So the current technology levy we have is a 6-year levy, and the first year of collection was in 2011, and the last year of collection is in calendar year 2016. Always, something to remember that our taxes are collected on a calendar year, but we operate in that fiscal year September 1 to August 31st. The current amount of the annual levy is $4.4 million a year, and based on King County Assessor's data, the median homeowner cost is about $87.32 a year for that $4.4 million. We have had significant return on this investment from our taxpayers. In this last 6-year levy, we were able to increase our access to technology for students to a 4-to-1 ratio. We were previously at an 8-to-1 ratio. So in the last 6 years, we've been able to double the number of devices we have and reduce that to a 4-to-1 ratio. Executive Director Ron Mayberry, who I'm attempting to channel, has created a very unique laptop deployment for our staff with a embedded refresh cycle now. You might recall him talking to you about those leasing options in the distant, in the near past. As Dr. Campbell has mentioned, we have significantly enhanced our infrastructure and wireless network, and I want you to hang on to that thought as we talk about some other dollars that have come our way because of that. Presentation stations are available in our classes. We have some, as promised, deployed some one-on-one programs at targeted campuses. The intent of this current levy was never to provide one-on-one devices for every student in the district. It was our attempt to build the infrastructure and our understanding about one-on-one devices that could be useful for us. We also have had a fairly significant move towards blended learning, where blended learning can exist in a variety of ways, but you have a classroom teacher and students are taking multiple different foreign languages in the same classroom, for example, or if you look at our Acceleration Academy, that is also a blended learning environment, just a couple of examples. And the last bullet I'm going to punt on with the additional digital resources provided. I think that probably encompasses a variety of things that we have looked at. One of the really things that we haven't really been proud about or touted about is how this technology levy has allowed us to leverage other resources. So there is a federal grant called the E-rate program that requires a fairly extensive application process and monitoring and reporting process. And through the work that we've done on the infrastructure so far, and I would like to compliment Tim Crawford out of the IT department, we have garnered $2.5 million in E-rate funding, and that money has been channeled back into the same sorts of technology enhancements that the tech levy was supporting. And for 2015, we were targeted for $1.7 million. The 2016 application process is still underway. In addition, some of you may recall that Federal Way School District is part of 7 districts that received Race to the Top funding. Also through the federal government, there's a variety of different projects in Race to the Top, and Project 4 specifically has supported a software, an instructional software product called Dreambox. And we have also used that funding to help purchase Chromebook carts and support our teachers with their ongoing professional development and using that new technology to help change outcomes for students. And speaking of students, I'll toss this back to you, Dr. Campbell.
When we think about the why of technology, there are some big ideas in terms of the necessary skills that our students will have to have. One is mastery of core subjects, and we see technology as a way to personalize environments to help differentiate the environment so students can have mastery. Learning and innovation, specifically in terms of the 4 C's, and in a moment I'll unpack what I mean by that. Fluency with information, media, and technology skills, and we see this also as a part of the life and career skills. When you look at Washington State, which is 8th in the nation in terms of the amount of jobs in the tech field, yet our students are not necessarily leaving with those skills. So this is critical in terms of career options. When we think of 21st century skills, there are 4 big ideas. We call them the 4 C's: communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity. And I know that these big ideas stem from the workplace. When we asked business owners and various companies, what do you know about your workforce that would allow them to be successful? These are some of the big ideas that students not only need every day in class, but they need to be successful in life. We see technology as a key tool to helping our students to be fluent in these areas. One of the things that we want to really ramp up is increase our just-in-time professional development. We want to, again, focus on those 4 C's. We see an importance in focusing on pedagogical practices, not just the tool, but how do you actually use the tool. For example, informative assessment. How do you use the tool to personalize the environment? How do you use the tool to differentiate? We also see technology affording us an ability to have a learner-centered environments, as well as integrating current technologies that are being used into our current PD offerings. And it's simply, what does this mean for our students? And this is what I press our team to often ask ourselves. What will be in it for them? And here are just a few of the big ideas. I won't necessarily read them all to you, but STEM opportunities, future ready for our students, 21st century skills, responsive, relevant instruction. Those are just a few of the outcomes that we see for our children.
Okay. So wrapping this up, on behalf of Dr. Tammy Campbell, her recommendation to the board is to run a 6-year replacement technology levy, to continue to ask for the same $4.4 million a year that our voters are currently contributing, and that certainly if that $4.4 million is constant in each of the next 6 years, then the tax collections are obviously the same in each of the next 6 years. So this is really one of those opportunities where you say this is a replacement levy, replaces an expiring levy, and contains no increase to our taxpayers. Resolution 2015-20, which you have a copy of at your podium in your pamphlets, and for the audience members, there are some on this back table. Resolutions for ballot propositions are very lengthy. This one's only 6 pages long, and you'll, at the next board meeting, be asked to take action on adopting this resolution. The key things that you need to be aware of that are in the resolution is it does contain the actual ballot proposition language, so what our voters will actually see on the election date of February 9th, 2016. And again, if you can see that for each of the 6 collection years, you can see that levy amount at $4.4 million. And of course, our voters don't approve a tax rate, but we have to provide them with an estimated tax rate. So if you look at that page, you will see that it is set at 37 cents per thousand, which is what voters are currently per $1,000 of assessed valuation, which is what voters are currently paying. The ballot proposition sets the election date. There are only 4 dates in any given calendar year that a school district can run an election. February 9th of 2016 is the first date in 2016 that can be run. It sets the length of the levy. As I mentioned, Dr. Campbell's recommendation is for a 6-year levy, which is the maximum length that a capital levy can be run for, and it sets the dollar amounts. This resolution also authorizes participation in the voter pamphlet. That takes separate board action for us to be a part of the voter pamphlet. So again, just wanted to share those highlights in terms of that resolution language. Be assured that we work with legal counsel in preparing the resolution language to ensure that we have met all of the legal obligations that are required through the state elections, the Secretary of State, and King County ordinances. So that is the resolution that's in front of you for your consideration and adoption at the next board meeting.
Directors, do you have any questions? Great.
I'm sorry I wasn't able to attend the last one, so this question may be redundant, but we've talked a long time, or I've talked to myself or talked to others about the question of historically what the role of the librarian was in a school. And then looking today at technology and the implications of technology and the understanding of how to use it properly and to have teachers have that level of support in supporting students with the skill sets they need to adequately use the technology. Are we assuming in this levy that that's going to be the responsibility of the teacher, or are we considering additional support for in whatever aspect we might see that?
We did not have conversations about librarians.
I'm not talking about specifically librarians. I'm using that as an example of some of the skill sets we lost when we and the support teachers had when we went to technology. And now I'm wondering, how will teachers be supported beyond, will there be additional staffing in this for
No.
that?
No, this isn't how currently right now, the staffing in terms of the levy is with our current ITS team. We see this integrated in the professional development that we give teachers, and so certainly the Teaching for Learning department will have to ramp up some of that. We haven't worked out those details, but we did not really talk about increased staffing because we want to increase devices and materials out to students. And once you do that with limited funds, we didn't increase the rate. That then creates a pull, right?
Yeah.
And so we have not got down to what I would call the details of it, but I don't see a whole lot more staffing coming out of this, because then you're limiting the actual technology that you can purchase.
Okay.
But we are thinking in new ways, innovative ways about professional development to train our teachers so that they have ongoing job-embedded PD. The other area that I will say, when we're doing our curriculum adoptions, we're going to be integrating the technology training real time. So I think that's another support to staff as well.
Well, all I would say is I hope we really carefully look at that and what resource we use, whether it's this levy or something else. My big worry is the misuse of technology by students. If you don't know how to properly use it, it can go sideways real fast.
I agree.
And that's what I am worried about, so that's what I was curious about.
Yeah.
But if we were to need something beyond that, it would not be out of this levy.
Not really. We're really focusing ourselves on our K-8. We're focusing ourselves on STEM and really enhancing it. I will say this, your worry around having technology out there that's not impacting instruction in a powerful way is a legitimate concern. And we talk about that all the time. But I think the way you really mitigate that is by embedding the technology in the professional development when you actually roll out curriculum versus saying, here's a tool that people are then using a tool without thinking about how can it be in service of the lesson. And that's what Dr. Pfeiffer and the team, Ronald Mayberry's team, are talking about and thinking about.
Well, I'd like to explore that more because I think it's not only using the resource, but somebody's got to support making sure that how we're using the resources or how we're educating children to use those resources really doesn't put the teacher in another bind with the amount of work to require to implement this. I think it's a great levy. I have no problems with that, but I really want to be concerned about, are we implementing it in such a way that it's really magnified the opportunity for students?
Yeah, I appreciated the work study. Obviously tonight's, it's a more condensed form of what we talked about, the work study, and that was a good discussion. And, anything, I think with technology, this is the tough one. Really you're trying to hit a moving target. What is it gonna look like in 5, 6, 10 years? And, and not being behind the curve, but staying with it. With stuff that we don't even know what it's going to exist. And I think it was great to have that conversation, and I appreciate that. What I appreciate about this one, Dr. Campbell already touched on it, is obviously the first time was more about devices, and I appreciate this time that we added the component about professional development. Because obviously that's the case is, a computer is not going to teach on itself. You just don't throw it in the room and it does it for you. It's a tool that we use, and we obviously know that. But now with things like Common Core, with standards-based grading, all that kind of stuff, I'm hoping to see with that professional development something that there'll be that buy-in district-wide, that there's that collaboration that can happen together just because we're all working on the same page, moving toward the same goals. And so that professional development doesn't just have to be school-specific, but district-specific, and I know we're working that way, and obviously that's a component of this levy is that professional development piece, and I think that's what gets us away from just a wasteful time being wasted instead of having productive time using these technology like it, harnessing the power that it is, and I appreciated, Director Mayberry last time talking about the difference about really making sure we get devices for our students that have the capacity and the capability, not just getting bottom of the line equipment for our teachers and what's the cheapest and whatever, but really putting tools and devices there that have a wide capability so that we're several years down the road, and we need to have those things working to that type of thing. We're not having, obsolete, technology in front of our students. So it's fantastic. And one other thing I'll touch on too is that I also appreciated was the consultant that we brought in. And I think that's a huge piece, that we're not just trying to figure out what we want to do by ourselves, that we're asking outside, that we're bringing other people in that have that expertise. And that's part of what this levy looks like here. It's not just us shooting in the dark, but we're talking, asking good questions. And yeah, I think it's a good move forward. And I think the public's going to appreciate that as well. So thank you.
Director Eto?
The takeaways I had from the work study was that the tech levy really helps all the students. As they mentioned earlier, it's for the top end students that can gain much more mastery in a subject or even accelerate their knowledge in different subject areas. And it also helps relative to understanding of how to use technology where it's becoming more and more required for even homework. So the homework gap and those kind of things that we hear about are addressed. The other point was that it put everybody on a common platform. It wasn't by building, it wasn't a hodgepodge of different ideas. What Dr. Campbell has done is now brought the entire brain trust together so that they have a lens to look through and say, this is the platform we're going to run with. And I think that's a big plus this go around. And the last takeaway I had was that this is a continuation, so it's not a new tax, and so it just makes it so important that we get it right the first time, because otherwise if it goes away, then it will be characterized as a new tax, and that'd be a bad news thing, especially for the students in Federal Way. So hopefully we're gonna push hard on this and we'll get it passed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And with that, we're adjourned. Thank you.